Welcome in, everyone. A beautiful Friday. We are Ronless today on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Friday Roundtable. I'm Sam Ekstrom. That's Luke Inman. He's the NFL Draft Buzz newsletter author. And that's Reggie Wilson of Care 11, the sports director and anchor. It reminds me of our mailbag show on Wednesdays. It's myself, it's Luke, it's Reggie, talking all Minnesota sports for the next hour. Glad you joined us today on Locked On Sports Minnesota, which you can subscribe to on YouTube or for free wherever you get your podcast. We're really glad that you're with us today. And we've got a lot to talk about. I've got a full rundown of every major pro Minnesota sports team. We're talking Vikings, free agency redo, Minnesota Wild draft. People hate it. Why? Why do they hate it? Karl-Anthony Towns keeps putting out ludicrous quotes into the ether. Is a trade looming for Karl-Anthony Towns? And the Twins, they just stink. They stink. But you know what? What is that I hear? Whoa. We got a fan thing going on? Where did that come from? What is this? What is that? I have no clue where this is coming from, you guys. There's just this music out there that's playing. Where is this going? Happy birthday, Luke. Happy birthday, Luke Inman.
Happy birthday. You went with that?
It's a big day.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Finally throw away that fake ID. First round's on me tonight.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, I had no idea where you're going with that one.
That I liked the little ramp for the suspense, but it went a little too long. The ramp went a little long. I couldn't really stick the landing there.
Wait, is Sam a game show host now?
Yes, that's actually been my aspiration.
Let's hear the game.
I've been trying to, working in broadcasting just to build my resume to do that. But then Seacrest sniped Wheel of Fortune.
Oh my gosh! Let's not even do that.
Sent in the application, didn't hear back. Unbelievable. Luke Inman, tell us about the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay, boys, the Vikes have $18 million just sitting in the bank right now after all those offseason moves. If we could go back, would we spend some of that extra cash on retaining a big name or two? That's what we're going to talk about today.
Love it.
I would say yes, but we'll get there. Also, free agency starts today. We've already seen some big moves in the NBA. Could something with Cat be looming? I'm not so sure.
And the Minnesota Wild draft, they got a lot of hometown guys. It's great for the Minnesota folks, but the hockey people are trying to tell us something about especially this first round pick. We're going to dive into that and see if we can get to the bottom of it. But we begin with the Minnesota Vikings, as we do most Fridays. Luke Inman, take it away.
As hard as it was to sit here this offseason, right? Watch big names move on like Thielen and Kendricks and everyone else. You see the vision, Kwesi, going into the offseason, having to rid himself of all those inflated contracts Rick Spielman left behind. Finally, now it does look like hopefully next year he'll finally be able to be at least in the middle of the pack in cap space. Of course, pending guys like Kirk Cousins, JJ's extension, Hawkinson, and all those guys. So I'll just say I agree with all the moves just on a broad scale. But if there was one guy I still think about in the back of my mind when I'm laying in bed at night, it's Dalvin Tomlinson. Because think about it. That defensive line was already a soft spot of the defense last year. I mean, that Cowboys game alone at home, it was a prime example. The way they got pushed around for 4 quarters, that one still keeps me up at night. And now you lose arguably your best player in the trenches. You replace him with Tonga, who's all in all been a career backup. And then the third guy you have penciled in is the guy the Packers didn't even want to re-sign. They could have easily re-signed Dean Laurie at the price, and they said no. So that doesn't really make you feel great, have a ton of confidence going into the season either. So I know everyone talks about cornerback, and rightfully so. But I'm shocked more people aren't at least concerned about the trenches and the 3 starters they have penciled in right now. I mean, that's still where the game is won and lost, guys. It's not a secret. And I just think having Tomlinson back in the middle or even at 5 tech would make me feel night and day better about Flores's chances at keeping this whole thing afloat. So, I pulled up the contract just now. He got in Cleveland. It's a 4-year deal. The first 2 years are only around $5 million each. Then it jumps to close to $19 million, which I know is a lot. So maybe I spread that around a little more I pay him like 10 or 12 out the gate, over double, and that softens the blow on the back end. So if I need to get out of that contract in 2 or 3 years, it's a lot more manageable, because I think you still want to keep a little bit of cash left over this year just in case. But what do you think, guys? Am I nuts? Why isn't the defensive line more of a talking point for people? I don't get that.
I see where you're going with that. I think where my mind kind of goes to are two guys. I'm going to give you a Luke answer, but two guys. One is za'darius. I think he was a top flight guy last year. I don't know why you just bring him in for a 1-year rental and then let him loose. I think he still has a lot of good football left in him, and I think he was motivated to play well last year and earn the right to, get the extra money that he got from Cleveland. But I think there's going to be a big void in that defensive trench, as you said, down in the trenches. I think the Dalvin Tomlinson loss is a pretty big one. I just don't know. I haven't watched enough of Brian Flores' tape of his defenses to know just how disruptive his defensive tackles are in his defense. And so I don't know if he just has a plan. For some reason, I just get this feeling that, like, they're just going to be on vibes on defense. Like, they're going to try to get pressure how they can with whoever they can. And they're just going to, like, manufacture some stuff to kind of make up for the lack of depth or the lack of talent that they have from last year to this year. But if I'm talking one guy that I want a free agency redo, and you guys have heard me say this week after week since it happened, Dalvin Cook. He's still a top flight running back in the NFL. This is not some guy who is on the decline. Like, he's still RB1. And the fact that he has, all these suitors and he's just got to make his choice. Apparently that's what the reports are. I have watched ESPN for the last week, and I know this is usually that time where, they're just manufacturing content because it's not a whole lot to talk about. Dalvin Cook has been in the headlines for the past week and a half. Which team is going to sign Dalvin Cook? What are they getting when they sign him? And, like, it has gone on for segments after segment after segment on Get Up, NFL Live, on the show that Max Kellerman hosts, on First Take, like all these shows, Sports Center, they've all talked about Dalvin Cook and his impact that he can have. And I think that's not for nothing. I know that it's the dead of summer or whatever, but he is still a top flight running back in the league. And I think that's a guy that I'm like, man, like, I know the price tag was high, but, like, he's still a dude.
Yeah, I think that you're onto something there, Reg. Like, the fact that they could have fairly easily made this work with what they had cap wise. Maybe you end up being frustrated once you see where he ends up going and how he does. Like, I totally get that. If I were given the Vikings full, like, cap allotment right now, $18 million, and I could go back and snatch some guys and put them back on this roster. And keep in mind, like, the Vikings kind of chose the path to not be able to do this. Like, they could have been more decisive, guys, and traded or cut Dalvin much earlier. They could have traded or cut Za'Darius Smith much earlier and had this money available to them in March when they needed it. And for whatever reason, they waited around. They were maybe hoping for something that never came, and they never had the chance to do this. They didn't allow themselves. So that's why the Vikings are in this mess. Like, let's be clear about that. And maybe this was the goal all along. Maybe they just want to roll this money over to next year's cap and just kind of let it sit there. That could easily be what the plan is. I don't love that, because that's only a teardown plan. That's not really we're going to try to compete sort of this year plan and sit on all this money. But if I were going to go back in time and make those moves and have this money, I think I agree with Luke. I think Dalvin Tomlinson, based on his age, his productivity, an area of weakness for the Vikings as it stands right now, I think Dalvin Tomlinson at $14 million-ish per year. And then if I've got a couple million left over, I'm sprinkling some towards Duke Shelley. I'm bringing back Duke. I'm bringing back somebody who one of the fan favorites last year. You could have afforded him. I have no clue why they cleaned house, almost for the sake of cleaning house. It was like, okay, we're going to get rid of everybody associated with this defense. Well, do you have to? Do you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater here? Like, I get Patrick Peterson's price tag is expensive, but did you need to cut Cam Dantzler here? Did you need to let go of Chris Boyd? Like, all of these guys, I think there was maybe some value to be found, and the Vikings chose not to pursue any of that and just completely start over fresh. So that's the bed that they made. Reggie, let's go to you.
Hey, real quick, T. Is Marcus Peters still sitting out in free agency? Because if I'm Brian Flores, I'm showing up to training camp. I see what I'm working with at corner. I demand a blank check from Kwesi's checkbook. And you tell Marcus Peters to name his price and just get his butt over here to Egan. I mean, I think he would make such a huge difference, especially this late in the offseason, to even have a guy that talented available. Pair him up with Byron Murphy. All of a sudden, with Byron Murphy and Marcus Peters, a weakness, okay, maybe it's not a strength, but you feel a million times better with Marcus Peters in the mix.
Let's just some quick on-air research here. So Marcus Peters with Baltimore last year, was he hurt in 2021? He must have had an injury. Didn't play.
Yeah, he tore his knee up.
Okay, so came back from the knee last year, played for Baltimore. Looking at his stats, it's not bad.
Not great.
Well, not great, but not bad either.
There's a reason he's still sitting out there, right? I mean, he's getting a little long in the tooth. He's got to be what? I mean, same draft as Trey Wayne, so 30, 31.
Yeah, he's 30.
Yeah, but in his prime, one of the best man cover corners, which I think is what you're looking for in Brian Flores' system. You talk about why I want Delvin Tomlinson back so bad, because if they don't have more push and just strength up the middle, then Brian Flores is going to have no choice but to dial up blitzes. And when you dial up blitzes, that means you're leaving your corners out on an island. You need guys who can keep up and go step for step with some of the best receivers in the league. You need guys who can run and play good man cover corner skills. So I think Marcus Peters, just knowing his skill set, yeah, of course, he's not a Pro Bowler anymore at this point, but I think that would help at least alleviate some depth concerns and give you another veteran voice in that secondary room.
To your point, Sam, I'm not really sure that keeping Cam Dantzler was the move, especially if you go back and watch the game against Detroit. In Detroit last year, and the fact that he's already gone to another team and gotten cut by that team as well.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Mm-hmm. Might have been some stuff going on off the field too with Cam. Don't know for sure. There was just some suspicious, roster moves made last year, and just the ease with which he got demoted behind Duke. It's always a head scratcher. So yeah, Marcus Peters still sitting there. And hey, if it's a couple million. Like, if the price is so low, why not? Why wouldn't you go for that and just try to add him to the mix? I think that'd be a better move than Bashad Breeland, Luke, a couple of years ago that they tried to save the season with.
Benny Sapp. How far back you want to go? They've been doing this for decades now, Sam.
The latest with the Minnesota Timberwolves and Karl-Anthony Towns, after I remind folks that FanDuel Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of Locked On and Major League Baseball. You can bet baseball all summer, including all the Minnesota Twins games at FanDuel.com/Locked On. They're in Baltimore tonight after a big players-only meeting. Are they going to come out fired up? Are they going to be swinging the bats? Maybe bet the over Twins and Orioles tonight. FanDuel.com/Locked On. All the lines. Great promotions there as well, including the no sweat first bet. Up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel Sportsbook app is very easy to use and pays you instantly when you win. So why not bet all the Major League Baseball games there? They're an official partner of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball trademarks used with permission. Timberwolves news updates. They have declined the option on Taurean Prince, and they have declined an RFA offer to Nickeil Alexander-Walker, though apparently they still want to get him back for a cheaper price. So they're clearing some money. This is about the 1-year anniversary where Windhorst sat back in his seat on First Take, gave the little finger gestures. Yep, Luke's got it. Reggie's got it. Is that going to happen again today? Are we going to have Windhorst saying, what's going on with the Timberwolves? It's a very interesting move. Reggie, what's going on with the Wolves?
Yeah, I don't see it happening, man. I think they are just kind of standing pat and trying to run it back like the Vikings did last season. They're like, you know what? Look, if Cat hadn't missed 50 games and they were able to play a full schedule with the two twin towers down low and all that, I feel like what was interesting was when Cat went down, it kind of allowed Ant to blossom. And then once Cat came back, like Ant was like the guy that he was supposed to be, and then Cat was able to play complementary with Ant. But then you got Rudy down low, and you're like, okay, what are we doing with him? Like, he's just kind of clogging it up, but he can still get you some blocks. He can still get some boards. He can still catch a couple lobs, off the pick and roll. And it's just interesting when you look at what the Nuggets did to win the championship. They had two bigs, but the other big, other than Jokic, was Aaron Gordon. And he did totally different things than what Rudy Gobert does. And so I still just don't see the vision with it. But I think, Connolly's like, look, man, I did a lot to get Rudy here. So, like, I can't just tank it and give up on it the first year after I did the trade. And so I think he's content to run it back, see what exactly it looks like if Cat is fully healthy, if Rudy's healthy, if they have Ant. And I just don't understand the whole three bigs thing. Now that you've dedicated, what is it, like $340 something million between three bigs? It's like, okay, like I get it. You like the bigs, but it's like, how are these guys going to get utilized? Because when you kind of look at it, if we're comparing to the Nuggets again, Naz Reid kind of plays like how Aaron Gordon plays. And so like you can kind of see the vision there, but he's coming off the bench and you're paying him quite a bit of money to come off the bench there. And so now you decline Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who really came on in the playoffs and really showed that he deserves to be here, but you're trying to get him for less money. I think in his mind, he's like, I deserve more money than what I'm getting based on my performance. And I remember talking to Nickeil when he first got here, when he first got traded here in the Conley trade. And at first it seemed like he was just kind of like a throw-in guy, like a guy who probably wouldn't see much of the court. Mm-hmm. And he's like, look, man, I'm trying to play. And I think after being traded 3-4 times in his career now, he told me that he was looking forward to just finding a team that he can stick with. And so now you kind of see him on the outs with another team. I think he's probably looking for a little bit more job security, maybe a little bit more job security than the Wolves can provide, especially if the word is already that they are talking about signing him for less money. Like, he's like, look, I'm still a young guy. How are you getting me on a cheap deal? And so I think they're content to try to run it back, maybe get some guys in at vet minimums or something like that, because they really don't have a lot of money to play around with. And the second apron is coming soon, so they're going to have to figure out this whole salary cap thing, because Ant is due to get paid. Jaden McDaniels is due to get paid. So it's going to be a little murky there moving forward. And then they draft Leonard Miller, who he's probably not going to play much minutes anytime soon, but like now you got 4 bigs that you need to figure out what you're going to do with. So something has to happen, but I'm not sure that they're going to do anything when it comes to moving Cat this offseason. They may wait.
Yeah, Luke, Reg hit the 8 topic. They want to run it back, right? See what they got with everybody's fully healthy for a full slate. If they were going to trade him, moving him during draft weekend would have made the most sense, right? Just because you have so many more options and variables to play with when you add this year's picks into the equation as a GM trying to make a deal. Now it just feels like your options are so much more limited in a player-for-player swap unless you're willing to wait a whole nother year for future picks that don't help you at all this season. And like Reggie mentioned, like it just feels like they would have wanted more instant impact assets because of the Rudy trade that basically puts you in a win now mode for the next, 3-4 years minimum. So you never say never, but I just think if it's a player for player swap, end of the day, they'd just rather keep Cat, push their chips all in, knowing, hey, we made the playoffs last year, even though we were missing our all-star player for most of the season, plus multiple pieces as well. Let's run this thing back. see what this thing looks like, and give it another shot when we've got everyone healthy for a full season before we start to blow the whole thing up, strip it down to the studs. Never say never, but I feel like the chances went from about 22% to about 5%, maybe even less than that. And maybe I'm biased because I'm a draft nut, but personally, if I'm trading Cat, I'm looking for premium draft picks in return, not a player-for-player swap. Unless it's just an absolute stud, I guess. But those moves just don't happen a lot in the NBA or any league for that matter.
Yeah, like if it was Cat and Conley for Dame or something.
Sure.
Like,
yes.
oh.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
I would love
example.
Dame. I would love Dame. And there does have to be sort of a salary for salary swap in the NBA, but a lot of those throw-ins are not really valuable pieces. They're just to make the salary work. And Cat has a big salary, so you'd have to give a lot of assets, I think, to make that match up. I think I'm correct in what I'm saying. I'm no Dane Moore when it comes to the NBA salary cap, but here's what the Wolves have done. The Wolves have actually created options for themselves. They've got a lot of assets right now that have value. Gobert's not one of them, but they've got Cat. They've got Nas. You're saying, wait, they just re-signed him. No, Nas is legitimately an asset that they could deal for positive value at any time. They could trade him at the deadline. They could trade him next offseason. That's an asset. Mike Connolly's contract is an asset. Jaden McDaniels is an asset. So if the Wolves run this back, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Or maybe someone else gets hurt. Anthony Edwards gets hurt and things go down the tubes. The Wolves have options. The Wolves can wheel and deal. They can replenish their draft capital. They've got a lot of players that would fetch them value. That's a good spot to be in. So I think they have options. They can run it back, try to win. And if it goes well, if they get off to a hot start, great. You've got a good team. If it doesn't, you've got assets. And you can trade them for picks. And you can fetch back, I think, a lot of what you gave up in that Rudy Gobert trade. I tend to think that Cat is harder to trade now with this so-called second apron, this hard cap that's coming to the NBA where luxury tax violators get penalized up the wazoo. And no one's going to want to take on, $60 million getting paid to Cat in a couple of years? That's a wild number. So I think that maybe Cat's value has diminished because of that just a little bit, but I still think he does have positive value because of what he can do as a shooter, his age, just overall statistical productivity. But I tend to agree with you guys. I think it's more likely than not that they do at least begin to run it back unless they're blown away with a deal. But hey, guys, come on. You got to re-sign Nah. Don't let Nah just walk away. You got to bring back NA-Dub.
Just to your point, as far as like all these guys are assets, outside of Cat and of course Ant, who's untouchable, nobody wants Rudy. Who is the biggest asset, would you say, on the roster that you could get the most bang for your buck or best value if you were to move him?
Yeah. Did you say outside of Cat?
Yeah, outside of Cat.
Yeah. I would say, and outside of Ant, because he's untouchable. I would say
is it Nas?
I would say Jaden or Nas, probably Jaden because of his defense. Okay. Reg, what do you think?
He's so young, right?
Yeah.
22.
And Nas is young too, and the contract is super friendly. Reg, do you have an opinion on that?
Give me the question one more time, Luke.
Well, Sam brought up a great point. Like, hey, just because we re-signed Nas doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be on the team. We could trade him. His value is very high. Outside of Cat, right? Forget about Ant. You're not trading him. Nobody's going to want Rudy. Who do you think has the most value in a trade on the roster? Is it Nas? Is it Jaden?
I think it's both Jaden and Conley. And Conley just because of that contract, because everybody's always looking for those aspiring deals. But as far as value goes and upside, because he's still so young, Jaden McDaniels for sure.
Yeah.
So you think Conley could end up on a tanker just as expiring money?
Yeah, I mean, look at what they're doing to Chris Paul. He's gotten traded twice already this offseason.
He didn't have time to unpack his luggage.
No, they haven't even announced the Wizards Warriors deal yet, but they kind of put him in as a little footnote. They're like, yeah, we traded Brad Beal and we got Landry Shamet. They're like, wait, no. Chris Paul was on that deal too, and then like fine print are like Chris Paul.
Oh, well, yeah, obviously Chris Paul was in there too, but we don't talk about that.
12-time All-Star Chris Paul, whatever it is. The NBA is crazy, and I wish I understood the money side of it a little bit better. I need to like go to a seminar and figure it all out, but it's it's a crazy league. Sometimes the NFL cap is crazy enough, but I think the NBA tops it for me. We're going to talk Minnesota Wild draft as well. They added some assets, or did they, to their roster this week. Quick reminder first, though. SiriusXM, proud partner with Locked On Podcast Network. You can find Locked On Sports Minnesota shows that includes Ron Johnson, the Minnesota Football Party, Minnesota Sports Rankum on the SiriusXM app. You can also find the hometown broadcasts on the SXM app. Just search Twins. Hear Corey and Danny announcing the game as they take on Baltimore this weekend. Baltimore's a good team, and a team that fleeced the Twins last year, by the way, in that Jorge Lopez trade. Not great for your Minnesota Twins right now. We'll get to that before the show is done, but Minnesota Wild draft. I think people label me a hockey guy, and I'll wear the badge, but I want to be honest about it. I don't know everything. So when people show me charts to try to tell me that Charlie Stramel, first-round draft pick, is going to flop based on, I'm not exactly sure, his profile, his productivity profile, the position he plays, whatever. Like, people are comparing him or saying he has a 9% chance to, like, play 100 games in the NFL. Some absurd metric. I don't really know what to make of it, but people did not like the Charlie Stramel draft pick. I did, because I called his games in high school. I called his games in college when the Gophers played the Badgers. It's a recognizable name, local kid. That's a good marketing ploy, but people don't like the pick. Reggie, you probably covered the draft at Care. What'd you make of the negative reaction to Billy Guerin's choice?
Man, like people, like I saw Bleacher gave it a C-. It's like, goodness gracious. But granted, if you looked at all the mocks before the draft, nobody had the Wild taking Stramel, which was interesting because I looked at a couple different articles and I saw like 10 different guys mocked. Like more than half of those guys were centers. So clearly everybody else was in tune with what the Wild were in tune with. They took 3 centers to start the draft anyway.
Yep.
But then there were guys from like Sweden and like guys like international players overseas and all that. And nobody had I saw a mock that had like 10 different players that the Wild could draft at 21, and none of those 10 guys were Stramel. And it was like, oh, well, okay. And so, I mean, Guerin went up there to that podium and announced the pick confidently. And he said they're extremely happy with the pick. Look, I think it was 12 points in 33 games with the Badgers last year, 5 goals. And people were like, oh my gosh, he was not good in his freshman. Well, he was a freshman, so give him some slack. And obviously they're not looking at him as being a guy who's going to come in and play right away. And so I think they hope that maybe another few years in college developing, then maybe going to the Iowa Wild, and maybe he could reach some of his potential. Guerin said he liked his upside offensively, and he said he skates well. He's a big body, 6'3", the guy is. Yeah,
he's huge.
And so he's a big body center. They believe he's a two-way player. He just has some more developing to do, as opposed to maybe a quote-unquote ready-made guy that maybe fans were clamoring for. I think best case scenario was I tweeted it, and I probably shouldn't have tweeted it. Oliver Moore falling to the Wild. He was two picks away from being a Wild player. Like, I think if he was on the board at the time, I think Guerin takes a swing. But
what was your infatuation with Oliver Moore? Well, why is he everybody?
Dude, he's like the eighth ranked player in North America. Like, he's like a dude.
Hey, Luke, you can watch Bally Sports North Gophers hockey this year, and you'll see him.
Oh, okay. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Do you know a guy or something? Do you have a connection with Bally Sports or something?
Yeah. I mean, no. Yeah, I don't know about that, but Oliver Moore is supposed to be like the fastest guy on ice that you will see.
Really?
Just one of those relentless playmaker, energy guys. Like maybe not the highest scoring dude, but just the hardest worker.
Yeah,
And,
I was gonna say, so what's the catch? Like, why was he even all the way at the bottom teams then to begin with? Maybe not the highest scorer, you said?
Yeah. Maybe a little depressed ceiling offensively,
Sure.
and size-wise, not the biggest dude ever, but it's never been a huge deterrent
Right.
for NHL
But
teams.
elite at the few things that he is really good at and known for. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know the draft board inside and out, so I can't speak to the value or just how good or bad the pick was. But I will say this. I mean, just from following the NFL draft for 20 years, you never know, guys. Like, I don't care what all the experts say, the knee-jerk reactions that take place. I get it. That's just what we do as media members and experts, etc. That's what's right in front of us. We have to analyze and assess this, but we really won't know until 3-4 years from now if the Wild got this one right or not. That's just how it works. And again, I know he's not the guy that you guys wanted, Oliver Moore, but they needed a new young center to get in the system. Reggie mentioned it. They grabbed 3 of them. They're just hoping one of them pans out just from a pure numbers standpoint. It sounds like his scoring really fell off. But if you look at his scouting report heading into the season, he was flirting, rumored to be a top 10 pick. So, I mean, there is a ton of upside with him. I know he was dominant in the USHL versus guys his size and his age. And I just think now, it's up to the coach. As a coach, it's up to you to tap into his skill set, maximize what he does best on the ice, and just hope you can develop everything else he needs to become a good pro in the NHL. So you never know. I know you guys are bummed out. Not the guy that people wanted. It sounds like he was considered a big reach by a lot of experts, but clearly the Wild liked him enough to pull the trigger, and we're a long ways from knowing whether he pans out or not. And I will remind you guys this as well, which we talked about on the Rankum show yesterday. Go check out that episode. The Wild still have one of the best young core of prospects, just as a group, as a pool, coming up in the ranks in the NHL. So there's still plenty to be hopeful and excited about for the future of the Wild.
Couple things, and good points, you guys. First of all, I love that Guerin is unapologetic. Guerin just makes decisions, does so confidently, and defends them. And I love that he kind of went against the grain here. I am willing to give Stramel time. He's 18. And also, and Russo wrote about this on The Athletic, his dad died too. Like, he's had a lot going on in his personal life. He was on a horrible Badgers team. Awful. And sometimes when you're a freshman and there's nothing around you, it's going to be tough to shine. I'm empathetic to that. Now, keep in mind what the Badgers are going through. They were terrible. They fired their coach and they hired Mike Hastings from Minnesota State Mankato. Huge shakeup in the college hockey coaching ranks. So the Badgers are going through a rebuild right now. Actually, Stramel would have been maybe a candidate to hit the portal. A lot of guys would leave in that situation. Looks like he's sticking it out, and he's going to be part of this new era of Wisconsin hockey. And Hastings is an unbelievable coach. So maybe it might not be this year. Maybe next year, the Badgers kind of have something around Stramel, and if he's still there, maybe that's when he gets to shine. But I'm willing to wait it out. I mean, for someone his size, for someone his age, you don't think there's going to be more development to come? I think there is. I think I'm confident that there's more to Stramel than meets the eye. I'm rooting for him. I am. And I think that he'd be an awesome story. St. Paul kid comes to play for the Wild, first round pick. How do you not like that? So that's my take on the Wild. And now we get to the part of the show where we have to bemoan the Minnesota Twins, who are in a tie for the lead. Actually, they do lead by percentage points, but in a tie for the AL Central lead at 40-42. Luke, it sounds like that Rocco rattled the cages a little bit after the sweep in Atlanta. Had a players-only meeting. Rocco was pretty vocal with the media, which is rare for him. Maybe there's going to be a little shakeup here. I just don't know what cards they have to play at this point to try to get out of this funk. The pitching's coming back to the pack a little bit. Boy, it's negative right now, isn't it?
They need a shakeup in the worst way. The definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, right? So, yeah, kiss this league goodbye for good if they don't start making some changes in this lineup like yesterday, like last week, like last month, because it's crunch time now. Like, we're in code red territory, kind of do or die point. And I know it's a marathon, it's a long season, but it's long overdue for Rocco to have some of these team-only player meetings and shake things up a little bit. Some new trial and error here, guys. You need to get some new bodies and bats in there, because what they got now is not going to get them where they want to go. It'll be 2022 all over again. Start with the lead for the first few months, watch it slowly crumble the second half of the season. If it were me, I'd probably start with Joey Gallo, honestly. I mean, you paid him, $10 million just to bring him in from New York, and I know he started out hot, but the experiment, I think it's officially over. I mean, he ain't it. And you start by getting him out of the lineup along with another name or two, and you start being a little bit more proactive in finding a solution to this madness if you're Rocco. I don't even care who you pick, honestly, at this point. It's just time to switch it up. I mean, this is crazy. Swap 2 or 3 of these guys out for some fresh legs, because this just ain't working. I can almost guarantee you, if they roll with the same lineup tonight versus Baltimore that they had versus Atlanta, there's going to be a lot of angry, upset, frustrated fans that are going to be shaking their heads watching the TV.
Hey guys, so just real quick, some breaking news. ESPN.
Oh, I got a sound effect for this. Hold on.
Hold on.
I got a sound effect. Wait for it. There we go. All right.
Boom. Just Andrew Marchand of New York Post says that Jeff Van Gundy has been let go from ESPN. Like, Jeff Van Gundy.
Oh, like canceled?
Yeah, like it's done. Like he's being let go as a part of.
Oh, it's a layoff. It's one
layoff.
of the layoffs. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, like that's crazy.
That's a
JBG,
big name. Yeah,
very much so. He probably ends up over at TNT or something. But but yeah. So that's like hot off the presses, and there's apparently going to be like 19 more big name talent that are gonna go.
What?
So,
19?
Yeah, today is like
house?
D-Day there. It's just all these companies doing these layoffs. It's crazy.
Holy smokes.
Sorry, but yeah, we're talking Twins. Those guys are cooked. It's funny, like last night, the MLB announced this all-star rosters. Of course, none of the Twins were on the starters.
Of course.
And now I'm thinking, and I would like to know from you guys, like, is there a Twin or two that makes sense in your mind by Sunday to be announced as an all-star? Last year, it was Big Buck and Luis Arraez. Luis Arraez probably makes it again based on what he's doing, but he's not with the team anymore, And then Buxton, he missed some time, and he was slumping once he got back. Like, I don't see him making it again. Is there anybody in your mind that makes the all-star team?
Duran would make sense.
Yeah, pitching, yeah, yeah.
But
is that it?
Joe Ryan?
Maybe.
Not including his last start, but
yeah, I don't know. It's
a good question that raises a lot of kind of red flags. You're right. Like Correa, Buxton, just on name brand alone, that's not going to do it this year. I mean, they're just not even close. You're right. That's a good
Sonny's been really good. Sonny and Joe Ryan could maybe one of the two, and then Duran. I think Duran's the best.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay.
Had Royce maybe started the entire season, maybe,
but it's tough. Like, and I think it's indicative of what's happening. Like, we've already seen the Guardians overtake them. It's like, all right, here we go, and it starts. Brutal loss by the Guardians yesterday. After you guys see that Jose Ramirez slide into home, and it was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah,
and then they ended up losing in the ninth. So this division is so unserious, and I think the Twins are also unserious. So I'm not really sure how it's going to play out, but it seems like it's trending towards it playing out of the Twins not winning it again. I think the problem that last loss, Rocco was just so exasperated. He was just like, I think he was like lost for words, and I think he was like looking for someone to blame. But everybody's just like, dude, it's kind of you.
It's on you, bro.
It's kind of on you. And I think that's where things are just like, oh man, like it's really bad. Especially too, I can only imagine what the Polats think after investing all that money in Correa and all the starting pitching that was supposed to be good. You give Pablo a new contract. and they're just a middling. Maybe calling them middling is even being too nice, but they're just like a middling franchise right now, just not doing anything well consistently.
You bring up a lot of good points, Reg. I'm curious, and easy to say in hindsight and play devil's advocate here, but I mean, of the 3 or 4 big trades that they've made in the last 2 seasons, has any of them really panned out? Has any of them made you feel really good about the move that was made? I mean, I know a couple of them really blew up in their face, didn't it?
Yeah. So the Malley trade from Cincinnati
Yep.
is going to be one of the worst they've ever had, because they gave up 2 guys that are balling in Cincinnati, Spencer Steer and then CEC. What's the full name? Encarnacion Strand.
Yep.
Or CES. Sorry.
He's up and he's playing and he's balling.
Steer is, and I think Strand is like close. He's really, really good. And then the Lopez trade with Baltimore, they gave them Yenier Cano, who's like one of the best relievers in baseball, and Cade Povich, who's going to be a stud. So those 2, horrible.
Brutal.
The Padres deal
brutal.
with Paddock blew up in their face. The Joe Ryan acquisition is the one that you can kind of hang your hat on, but Falvey and Levine are just in the cooler right now. I mean, everything they touch is ice cold. The signings, the choice like not to trade Kepler, trading, the guys they've let go are succeeding on other teams. It's been a mess. It's been an absolute mess. And you can give them credit for assembling a pitching staff via trade across the board, basically, like bringing in all these guys and they're performing pretty well. But the batting lineup, the position players, they've assembled a team that is slow, a team that doesn't hit for average. They've kept around veterans that are seemingly in decline. It's rough. And all the big contracts too. Like Correa, Buxton, Gallo, anyone making any considerable amount of money, Kepler, have all been miserable. It's
the Luis Ariz trade, right? I mean, that's number 1. I mean, or near the top.
Yeah. Trading Ariz and then extending the guy you got for him and then having him immediately just fall back into the pack.
You can't go 1 for 5 on those types of trades, those big monster trades. That changes the direction of a franchise. It really does. I mean, it happens in every sport. So you got to go at least 50-50 to lose so many and only win maybe 1 or 2 with the Joe Ryan trade that you mentioned. That's debilitating to a franchise's long-term big picture. So I'm not going to say that's the sole reason we're in this mess right now. There's so many factors, game to game, Rocco having a lot to do with it, but big picture, those hurt, man. Those really stink for the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah. And you know what's scary too, Luke? We were talking Twins prospects yesterday on the Rankum show.
Yeah.
There's some nice position players. You got Lee, you got obviously Lewis, you got Emmanuel Rodriguez, but there's not a lot of pitching coming down the pipeline. They gave up some nice pitching in some of those trades. They've given up some prospects trying to be buyers. This is why I don't want them to buy at the deadline. You're not good. So don't. Like, if anything, sell. You can't be worse than you are right now. Get some of these younger guys up here and just see what they can do. But I don't want them to deplete this prospect pool anymore for the sake of trying to win the worst division in history. Not interested in that.
Their top pitching prospect is Connor Prelip, I think, who's a 2nd rounder last year. So you won't see him for 3-4 years if he even pans out. But you're right. I mean, I'm just looking at the top 40 list. It's pretty thin. It gets thin quick.
Yeah. No, it's not great. Not great. Reggie, what's going on at Care 11 tonight? Are you on the news tonight, or are you a Friday off guy?
No. Yeah, we're doing the Care 11 Sports Extra tonight. So
nice.
We had one-on-ones with the new Timberwolves draft picks. So we'll show those tonight. I had a one-on-one with Leonard Miller. Will had a one-on-one with Jalen Clark, who's recovering from the torn Achilles. Junkyard Dog, he called himself. So he should be a fun player. Once he gets healthy, probably doesn't play this upcoming season, but we'll talk about that. Big fee, not the little one, is what I always say. Nafisa Collier is having a season. coming into the year, Cheryl talked about how she was going to be their best player. She challenged her a couple weeks ago. Hey, you need to shoot more. Fee's like, okay, bet. She hit the first game winner of her career last night, she said, like ever. She's never hit a game winner before. She hit the game winner, and it was cold-blooded nasty. I don't know if you guys saw the video, but like, good Lord. I watched it live, and I think I yelped. Hopefully I didn't either scare or wake up the neighbors. So we're going to talk about that performance and just how the Lynx are now. So I think it's 5 wins in their last 7 games. So they're doing well. Maybe they're doing a little too well for the Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers, Angel Reese sweepstakes. But yeah, we're talking that, and we'll see what the Twins do against the Orioles and see what the Saints do. They're still playing the Braves affiliate. So.
All right, good stuff, Reggie. Appreciate your contributions. He's at Reggie Wilson TV. And hey, big day for our guy at Luke _ 48 years old today. He's doing the wind horse. We love you, Luke. Thanks a lot. I'm Sam Ekstrom, at Sam Ekstrom on Twitter. Happy holiday weekend, 4th of July to everybody. Enjoy yourselves, and so long on Friday Roundtable.